Writers, this conversation today was truly eye-opening for me, and I think it's one of the most important discussions we need to be having today as creatives. That's because I'm joined by Dr. Candice Stanfield Wiswell, a writer, ADHD writing coach, and late diagnosed ADHDer with a PhD in psychology. So, ever feel like writing should come more easily, but your brain has other plans? Dr. Wiswell gets it because she sees it every day in her clients and also experiences it herself. She helps neurodivergent writers step out of their heads and onto the page. With warmth, humor, and science-backed strategies, she empowers writers to trust their voice, to take charge of their creative process, and to build the joyful writing life they've always dreamed of. When she's not coaching or writing, you'll find her reading, dancing with her 4-year-old, or sipping a long-forgotten oat milk latte, still warm, thanks to the temperature-controlled mug gifted by her thoughtful husband. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Candice Stanfield Wiswell. Welcome to The Whole Writer, a place where we talk about what it means to show up as a writer. Not just a better writer or a more productive writer or a published writer, but a whole one. Someone who's grounded in their voice, in their community, in their creative path, even when the world tells them to hustle, compare, or conform. I'm Nicole Meyer, a multi-published author and book coach who believes that nurturing the person behind the page is just as important as refining the words on it. Each week, we'll explore the terrain of writing life with honesty, warmth, and practical wisdom, creating space for you to write from a place of wholeness rather than depletion. Whether you're drafting your first manuscript or publishing your 5th book, you'll find conversation and companionship for the journey here. So, settle in, bring your questions and your curiosity, and let's discover what it means to write and live with authenticity and purpose. Welcome on in, everyone. I am so happy to have you here with me today. I am with Dr. Candice Stanfield Wiswell, and we have had the pleasure of working together in the past, and she has evolved to not only be a writer, but she also now is supporting other writers. And I'm thrilled to be talking about our topic of writers who are balancing the journey of ADHD and their creativity. So welcome, Candice.
Hi, Nicole. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. Longtime listener, first-time guest.
I love that. And this is perfect timing because honestly, I am so thrilled about what you're doing. I genuinely know that this is something that's needed. I work with so many different kinds of writers, and sometimes there are learning differences. Sometimes there's thinking differences. And I feel like you're just the right person to really address what the creative process looks like for people who maybe have some of those differences. But before we jump into that, could you share a little bit about yourself, how you came to specialize in helping writers with ADHD, and even what your own journey's been like as both a writer and someone with ADHD?
Yeah, thank you so much, Nicole. So I have a PhD in psychology. My concentration is in cognitive and behavioral neuroscience. So a lot of my study and my research has centered around human information processing and how we think and learn differently, how we remember things, how we apply those to make actions in the world. From a very early age, I started writing poetry. I had an English teacher who encouraged me back in junior high to send one of my poems out to be published. And I was shocked to see that it was accepted in an anthology. So I started to really believe in myself as a writer. I continued writing poetry. I mean, I still write poetry to this day. I honestly think that writing poetry saved me during COVID. It was a very hard time for a lot of people. And poetry has been something for me to help me organize my thoughts, to express myself in ways that I was either incapable of expressing myself or afraid to due to criticism. And through trial and error, I found my community of writers through this. So I've also written in academia. So as I mentioned, I studied psychology, and so a lot of publications there. And then I moved on to being a science communication strategist for a digital mental health company as well. And so being able to tell story through not just nonfiction writing, but also fiction writing have been great passions of mine over the years.
Incredible. I mean, you came to it in such a unique way. I love that you shared how poetry sort of saved you in a way over the pandemic. We all had something that we clung onto, maybe even didn't realize that we needed it as badly as we did until we were all home and isolated. But can you talk a little bit more about the poetry? How did you experiment, or was it just something you did for yourself every morning? Did you ever share it with anybody before the anthology?
Yeah. So it was something I actually hid away as a part of myself that was hidden for a really long time. I had notebooks scattered throughout the house, taped behind the washing machine and
Wow.
behind my bed. And there were just ways for me to be just myself, authentic self, without any judgment or having to explain the way that I wanted to express myself. It wasn't until senior year of high school I got tricked into sharing some of my work. I had friends who were like, let's go do this thing. Let's go to a poetry reading. And they put my name on the paper, but not theirs. So I
Wow.
read, I was nervous, but I loved it. It was just exhilarating and it was so well received. Everyone was so accepting. And I was like, these are my people. I know these are my people.
Yeah.
I kept doing it. I've been published in a few other places as well. And it's just something that I love to experiment with it. I like to look at different forms and structures. And just if I feel stuck in my writing, my everyday writing, I will write a poem about how I'm feeling or pick some keywords that, things in my environment and just write about it. And it just kind of gets me started and gets the momentum going.
Yeah. Get those creative juices flowing, as I like to
Yes.
say. I love that you shared that. I bet there's people listening right now who also have hidden notebooks or journals with their writing/expressing themselves. And I feel like you're giving them quiet permission to pull those out and maybe tell a friend, because it sounds like you did tell friends and then they encouraged you, even though you didn't ask for that specific kind of encouragement. It's always surprising to find out the ways people are encouraging once you do share just a tiny bit about the fact that I'm a writer, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, really incredible. Okay, so I'm going to jump forward here. You are a late diagnosed ADHDer, if I can say that,
Yeah.
which is actually incredibly common, especially for women. So, can you share what that discovery process was like for you? Did getting diagnosed change how you understood your own writing struggles or even your creative process?
Yeah. So I actually was not diagnosed until after I finished my PhD and had my daughter. After having her, I realized I was barely keeping it together to begin with. I was overworking myself, as many women do, not just women, but men as well. But we have a lot of caregiving responsibilities that are kind of thrust upon us in society and in our relationships. And not just for our children, but also, if your parent is aging or a partner is ill. And I realized that my quirks about how I process information, it was always normal to me because it was just all I ever knew. And then I have to admit, I've had friends over the years saying, I think you might have ADHD. Or, there's social media aspect. A lot of people are discovering through social media, oh, wait, that could be ADHD. I started taking it more seriously. And when I hit a roadblock with myself, I just, there are mornings where I didn't want to do anything. I just felt so overwhelmed and so burnt out from pushing past my limits and feeling like I had these expectations that I had to meet. And they weren't even realistic expectations for me. They were just expectations that I just imagined were what I needed to do. And I've heard a lot of women say that, as a lot of writers say that. Like they feel like they have to have this ideal writer routine. I have to wake up at 5 a.m. I have to write 10,000 words or something crazy. And it's just not realistic. It's when I was finally diagnosed, I realized, oh, this makes a lot of sense. I'm not lazy. I heard growing up, you have a lot of potential, but you're just not applying yourself. It's like, I am, though.
Right.
I'm applying myself way more than what is sustainable. And I started to recognize that there were shifts in my energy. Like some days I had more energy, some days I had lower energy. And it took a lot of work to accept that I'm not always going to be running on full speed ahead every single day. There are times where I need to give myself permission to slow down. And that's something I try to advocate my clients. We try to create a minimum viable writing routine where they look at their energy levels, they track them, they track how their challenges manifest into their writing, what their strengths are and their values and what they want to lean into, and create a plan for those low energy days, those low targets, just something really small that they can celebrate after they've reached it. And instead of shooting for the moon, like, I wrote 20,000 words last week, I should do it again this week. It'd be great if we could, but we're not machines.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So I have so many questions that are coming up. I'm happy you shared that because I used the word permission earlier in this interview, but you are giving people permission to tap into identifying, knowing, and understanding what's right for them.
Yes.
I do hear that a lot from writers saying, well, everyone else seems to get up at 5 a.m. and everyone else seems to be writing 1,000 words a day. Why can't I? And the truth is, we're not all the same. And like you said, we're not machines. So you're giving people permission to tap back into their intuition. Know yourself of what works for you and what doesn't in the smallest and simplest of ways. So before we jump into a couple telltale signs for people who might be curious about themselves and ADHD, I do kind of want to stay on the track of how did this change your writing process? How did it change your creative process? Because I know that you're also writing more than just poetry these days.
Yes. Yeah. I'm working on my debut novel. That's one of the reasons how you and I got connected. So for me, how it's changed is that I've recognized that individuals who are neurodivergent, particularly individuals with ADHD, we tend to run on a more interest-based nervous system versus someone who may be neurotypical who runs on an importance nervous system. So for importance, it's things that these are priorities, whether it's a priority for yourself or someone else has set the priority. You know it's important, it has to be done. You know there are consequences if you don't do it on time. And so you just do it. With somebody who's interest-based, has an interest-based nervous system, they know that it's important and they want to get it done. And it's oftentimes not a struggle with motivation. It's not necessarily an issue with motivation. It's more of an issue with task initiation. I recognize that within myself as well. So with an interest-based nervous system, there's a framework developed by a physician called Dr. William Dodson. ICNU, ICNU. I like it to be nice because it's just easier to remember, NICE. So for the NICE framework, it would be something that is novel, interesting, challenging, or extremely urgent. So waiting until the last minute to write a paper is something that I'm very much known for. Not going to lie. If it's challenging to a point where you work with a buddy, like, oh, let's try to reach this deadline by a certain time, or you can make it more interesting by looking up a little something extra when it comes to researching, making sure you don't get into a research rabbit hole while you're doing it, because that can prevent you from drafting forward, or making it more novel. So moving to a different place in your home, going to a coffee shop you've always wanted to go to, or just something that's going to make it a little bit different, feel a little different. So I advocate for creating routines because it lowers the cognitive load, because that's what's helped me and that's what research shows helps. But sometimes you can feel like you're in a bit of a rut. And so it's a good idea to kind of create a few different options for yourself, like a menu of options of, okay, if I don't want to write here today, where do I want to write? If I like getting a pastry, like a chocolate pastry is like my favorite thing to do. And a good latte, like, can I make it at home or can I, go get it somewhere, bring it back home? Do I want to eat at the coffee shop? So just kind of creating like a menu so you don't have to think about it in the moment is really going to be helpful. It's something that I do. Yeah.
That's really good. So can you I like the NICE acronym. So can you just repeat for those listening? I know that there's certain people probably taking some notes right now. Repeat what the NICE stands for one more time.
Yeah. So NICE stands for novel, interesting, challenge or challenging, and extremely urgent.
Okay. And would my menu of sorts include a bullet point or thought on each of those. So when I am feeling the pressure, when I'm feeling like I want to do something, but I just can't come to it, would I go to this list?
I would recommend it. I don't know about other individuals, although I have heard some other people say this. But for me personally, I'm just exhausted. Just the idea of taking on a big task, even if it's something I really want to do, initiating that task can feel really difficult. But when I have this list in front of me, I don't have to think about it as much. It makes me less stressed out. I just go, okay, boom, 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 boom. I have these options. These have worked in the past. Let me try mixing it up a little bit. Let me go through this. I know some people who have spinner wheels
Oh, wow.
to help them decide what to do that day because they just want something fresh, something different. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really insightful. Okay, so like I said, I'm sure there's people taking notes right now. Their ears are perked up thinking, oh, this might be a way for me to get through my creative process. Let's even back it up a little bit for those people listening. Are there telltale signs for novelists specifically, or memoirists or poets out there who are listening who might be wondering more about ADHD? How does it uniquely show up in the writing process?
Yeah. So you're rewriting that sentence over and over again because it doesn't quote unquote feel just right. That's perfectionism. And that's something that we tend to get into, a perfectionist loop. So instead of writing forward, it's like, if I don't get the sentence right, it's not going to be great. But when you realize after continuing to write that that sentence may not even, may have to cut that sentence, you realize, oh, wait, that sentence I ached and pained over, oh, it doesn't even fit here anymore. And I know killing your darlings is a big thing. Like you don't want to cut out the words you love. Something I do to ease the pain, because I'll get like a physical tinge of pain if I have to cut that sentence out that I love so much. I will copy it and move it over to a Word document, for example, and just like hold on to it later. And that sparked poems, that sparked short stories, just having that sentence, that feeling that I had around its initial creation. So it's not that you have to throw these things out. You can keep them. They just need to be purposed in a different way. And some telltale signs in some novelists for ADHD is, in addition to the perfectionism aspect, is getting stuck in the exciting ideation phase. So getting really amped up about the idea, daydreaming about it. It's just so fun and it's really good for writing generation. But if you're not capturing it, it can get lost. Life gets in the way. So something I do is I do voice memos. I use the Notes app. I write it down, just whatever I can get to the fastest. I've heard some individuals say that just outlining it and like, okay, it's done. I know how it's going to end. So I don't feel like writing the story further. But it's like, but there's so much more that can be built out from that. Give it a chance. Give those characters a chance to live and breathe. And then there's also the aspect of over-researching, using it as a form of pseudo-productivity. Research has a great place. It's necessary, especially for historical fiction. But at a certain point, we can sometimes use research as a way of, oh, I'm writing. Okay, what are you writing? Oh, I'm still researching. Don't you have 50 pages of research? Let's write a little bit from that research. And then if we feel later we need to fill in the blanks, put a mark in your documentation. Maybe I like to use brackets and say, enter such and such here, or double check this. I'll put comments like word track changes in Word. And so those are different ways to kind of overcome that. But there's the looking at the project as this giant amorphous blob. Like, you want to write this story, but it feels too big to tackle. So breaking it up into small, manageable steps, even something as small as turning on the laptop and opening the document and reading the last paragraph that you wrote, that can just really get the brain juices going and help you get to writing. Negative self-talk is a big one. A lot of writers struggle with that, especially writers with ADHD. So feeling ashamed about being inconsistent with writing is a huge issue that I see in a lot of clients as well as myself. It can make it more difficult to restart the writing process. Because if you feel like, oh, I'm inconsistent, what am I even going to get done today? You don't know what you're going to get done because you haven't tried it yet. So again, the task initiation is really the biggest struggle, not necessarily motivation.
I am nodding. The listeners can't see us, but we're on Zoom. I am nodding and nodding and nodding because all of the things that you're mentioning, Candice, are things that I have seen with writers that I have worked with. And one of the things that came up when you were talking about that was a few writers I can remember from years ago that would get so focused and excited on planning and strategy calls about their plot. But then they would have a call with me 1 week later and they would have redone the whole plot. And the following week, they would have redone it again. So they kept redoing the story premise without actually writing forward. And my heart would break because they had started off with such a strong plot, but they just kept reiterating and reiterating. And another one, like you said, was coming back and revising the same sentence or the same paragraph over and over. And they wanted to get out of that loop, but they didn't know how.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big struggle. It's important to note that these are not character flaws at all. There is no moral failing in this. This is just something that is a bit challenging. We want to appear like we have it all together. And many of us do. And it's not to say that having it all together is the way to be. It's just everybody's different, regardless of your neurotype. And you have to really focus on what works best for you. And everybody has their own way. And what may have worked last week may not work next week. And that's why having like a menu or some sort of routine is going to be really helpful.
Yeah, let's stay on that thread. I am hoping people listening that feel like maybe some of the things that you're talking about could apply to them are breathing a sigh of relief right now. This is not a flaw. It's not a character flaw. It doesn't mean you're not meant to be creative. It doesn't mean you're not going to finish that book that you're working on. It just means you work differently. So let's stay on the thread and talk about how writers can work with their ADHD rather than fighting against it.
Yeah, so I mentioned that task initiation can be a challenge. So with an ADHD thinker, we tend to think non-linearly, and that can make for excellent creative problem solving, being able to see things from completely different angles. But we need to recognize that sometimes having rigid rules can trigger the resistance. It can make it difficult to sit down and write. And having a flexible plan, something that's varied, strategies that respect our fluctuating energies is really important. That traditional advice of just focus, just get it done is just not going to work. I mentioned we're not machines. Nobody's a machine. We're all human here. So some other things that have worked, of course, is breaking the bigger tasks into smaller chunks, something that is more realistic, and keeping in mind that our energy can fluctuate from day to day and even within a single day. So if we have ourselves like a menu style writing routine that's about 2 to 4 points or 2 to 4 options based on our mood or energy, we can pick through that. It gives less cognitive load and it helps us feel more empowered. External accountability. So body doubling, I know, is a huge thing in the ADHD world. The person doesn't even need to be someone you know. I know there are apps for doing this, like Focus Made is something I've used in the past. The first 5 minutes, you say, hey, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And then you can choose to keep your camera on or off. And then you write. And when the time is up, you come back together and check in and say, okay, how did it go? So there are people who have done yoga during that time. There are people who have done their dishes. They don't have to be doing the same task as you. Someone like me who's a bit more extroverted, COVID was very difficult for me because I actually had a writing group. We wrote in person. I worked on my dissertation, like my comprehensive exams and my dissertation during that time. And I turned to YouTube and I did those Write With Me videos where it runs on the Pomodoro technique. So it was like 50 minutes of writing and you just hear somebody clickety clacking on their keyboard and playing lo-fi chill music. And then it would do like ding, and then it would be like a 10-minute break. And then it would ding again. Then it'd go right back to another 50 minutes. That was so helpful. That really helped me a lot. Yeah.
Incredible.
And then of course, dipping into that nice framework, looking at something that can make it more novel or more interesting, pairing it with something that's going to boost dopamine, which is something that we tend to not have as much as in our brains with ADHD. We have neurotransmitter differences. And instead of trying to force ourselves into this box, we need to recognize that we just work a little differently, and that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Such beautiful nuggets of wisdom, Candice. You have opened my eyes to things I've noticed, things I've wondered about, but not quite been able to understand the why behind everything. And you've really opened my eyes to a lot of this. So thank you. And I'm guessing you're doing the same for people listening right now. Let's go into something that I know you have talked about before, which is you've emphasized building a joyful writing life, which feels especially important for ADHD writers because they might carry shame around their creative struggles. So let's talk about how you specifically help clients rediscover joy in their writing and their creative process, when they've typically been beating themselves up for not being, quote, productive enough.
Right. So shame it's one of the biggest killers of creativity for ADHD writers. And joy really matters in the sense that when we're writing, if we feel too much pressure or we feel like things are too rigid, that we have to fit in with some certain mold or parameter, it can make us feel like we risk failing because we think a little differently. And so if we try to fit ourselves within this box, we feel sometimes like, oh, what's the point of even writing? I'm not going to do well. And that's ludicrous in the sense that there are so many people that need to hear what only you can write. There are a lot of people the 20% of the world's population is neurodivergent. That's like 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 people or something like that. And like 61% of adults with ADHD, particularly women, were not diagnosed until their 30s, 40s, and even 50s. So there are a lot of people out there that don't realize that they have a learning or thinking difference or a neurodivergent. So your unique perspective can really resonate and connect with a reader who needs to hear your words, even if your character isn't neurodivergent. It's being written from someone's perspective who lived that experience. And that can really make all the difference for someone when they connect to your work. So putting that pressure on ourselves can force us to feel disengaged, and focusing on not just ourselves, but how we can help others can be very joyful. Joy can fuel our curiosity. It can fuel play and motivation. It can help us to want to do the work. When it feels good, we want to do more of it. When it feels bad, you want to do less of it. And the ways that I try to help some of my clients rediscover their joy is have them recognize their small wins, celebrate them. That helps build momentum, which helps build confidence in yourself and your abilities as being a writer, and not just in your writing life, but it can bleed over into other aspects of your life as well. I help them with giving themselves permission to adapt their process without feeling guilty. Separating self-worth from productivity is a really big thing. We live in a high productivity culture, and it's hard to look at a society that rewards high output. Writing is a knowledge-based career, and what you put into it is not always what you get out of it financially or monetarily, but emotionally, like getting that out, an achievement, it's just something that money cannot buy. Joy in writing, a joyful writing life looks like you finishing projects without burning out. Actually finishing projects,
So relatable.
Yeah. Restarting the next day after you had a bad day before, like you weren't as productive the day before. Oh, well, today's a new day. Helping to recognize and give yourself grace without feeling guilty about it, leaving the desk feeling energized instead of depleted, and also advocating for yourself, saying no to things. It's a very difficult thing to do. A lot of individuals with ADHD were self-diagnosed people pleasers, not just us, but women in society.
Right.
And we feel like we have to help others, and we tend to overlook our own needs. And advocating for ourselves and speaking up and saying nope to things that are going to deplete our energy, it's really important because every day we have very limited energy. And every day the amount of energy that we arrive with differs. So honoring that can lead to a joyful writing life.
I love all of that. I mean, honestly, it's so relatable whether we identify as ADHD or we don't. So much of what you said is relatable about the hustle culture and the feeling self-worth connected to productivity and showing up to the creative process with a limited amount of energy and identifying this is my day or this maybe not be my day. I mean, all of those things, again, I go back to the same word I keep repeating over and over is permission. Give yourself permission to identify, acknowledge, and then care for yourself. So this is all just golden. I love everything you're saying, Candice, and I want people to have the opportunity to know how to connect with you, how you work with writers. So let's do it the other way around. Let's have you first talk about how you work with writers and then tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, so how I work with writers is I help them in a multitude of ways. So I can help them with creating a writing routine that honors their own unique patterns and strengths and helping them to alleviate some of the mental load and alleviate some of the resistance that might come to initiating the task of writing. I also help them to uncover some of the negative self-talk, some of the aspects of ADHD that they may not be aware of how it arrives to the writing process. I help them to gain confidence in their own abilities and to help them get clear on their story idea so that they can focus on it and write in a way that is clear and enjoyable for them. And I help them basically finish their projects without burning out.
Okay, that sounds amazing. Do you work with writers in a one-on-one capacity or do you have a group program?
I work with writers on the one-on-one capacity, but I am going to start offering a group program starting in October 1st. And it's going to run until right before Thanksgiving. And it's an 8-week program. It's the first round of it. It's called the Focused ADHD Writer, and it's all about creating focus and accountability and momentum so that writers can finish their projects without burning out. One of the things about ADHD is that we really thrive through community, and writers in general thrive through community, honestly. But in this sense, there's no need to mask or, you can be more of your authentic self in this group. So a lot of people know the struggles that you're going through. And so it's really important to have this community.
Incredible. Candice, tell people how they can find you because I know there's going to be people listening who want to sign up for that program.
Yeah. So my website is Creative Thrive Coaching. That's CreativeThrive coaching.com. And you can go on there to find out more information about the services I offer, as well as the group coaching program, the Focused ADHD Writer, that's coming up starting October 1st. I'm also on Instagram at Creative Thrive Coaching. And I haven't done anything with it yet, but I also have a YouTube channel. So look out for that in the future.
To be continued. I love it. Thank you so much, Candice. I will put all of this in the show notes so people can just click on the link and find you. I so appreciate you being here today and sharing all of your wisdom. And you personally have to keep me updated on your writing, okay?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Nicole.
Okay, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on The Whole Writer. If you want to check out my coaching programs for fiction writers, visit NicoleMeyer.com. That's MEIER. And if you like this episode, I'd love you to take a minute to leave a rating and review for this podcast. This will help more writers like you to discover the show and to get going on their writing journey. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, happy writing, everyone.